Okay, let's kick things off for this deep dive. We're taking a step back today, looking at this really fascinating figure, John Wanamaker, often called the father of modern advertising.
That's right. And our main source here, our roadmap, if you will, is this article from Entrepreneur Post. It does a great job pulling together, his life story and just his incredible impact.
Yeah, it really does. And our mission really is to take you right into the heart of that source. We want to pull out the key nuggets, the things you really need to know.
Uh-huh. Like, who was Wanamaker? Why were his ideas so, well, revolutionary back then?
Exactly. And crucially, why does his story still matter? Why should you care about this today?
Okay, so let's start with that first question. Who was John Wanamaker? The source, it positions him as, well, much more than just a businessman.
Right. It paints a broader picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Born way back in 1838, died 1922, Philadelphia native. And the article flags him straight away as this major American figure. Business, yes, but also deeply involved in religious life, civic stuff, politics even.
A real polymath of his time, almost.
Kind of, yeah. And definitely one of the absolute pioneers, the source stresses of modern advertising and marketing.
And the launch pad for a lot of that was Wanamaker's, the department store.
Exactly. He founded one of the very first proper department stores in the U.S. And it wasn't just like a store. Yeah. The source describes it becoming this hugely successful enterprise, grew into one of the biggest retail chains, built on, really innovative ideas right from the start.
But he didn't start at the top, did he? The article mentions a more modest beginning, Quaker family in Philly.
He did, yeah. Started working really young, errand boy, that sort of thing. Then a clerk in a dry goods store.
Learning the ropes.
Pretty much. Worked his way up, became a partner, and then bang, 1861, he opens that first big department store.
And the source says it was pretty much an instant hit. People got it straight away.
Seems like it, yeah. It suggests people really responded to what he was doing differently.
Which brings us neatly to those innovations. This is where he really earns that father of modern advertising label, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the article highlights some really key things he did that were just, well, unheard of.
Like what? What jumps out from the source?
Okay, well, first off, something we totally take for granted now. Customer service. The article really emphasizes his pioneering move to offer a money-back guarantee.
Wow. On everything.
On all purchases, yeah. And he made returns easy.
Think about that for a minute. Back then, it was often buyer beware, right? So that level of standing behind your product, that was radical.
Totally radical. It just built this incredible trust, customer loyalty.
Huge. What else on the innovation front? Advertising, obviously.
Right. The source makes a big point that he was one of the very first merchants to really go big on newspaper and magazine ads. Not just a little bit, but extensively.
So properly using the mass media that was emerging then.
Precisely. And he wasn't stuck in the past either. The article notes he was an early adopter of radio advertising, too, when that came along.
So always looking for the next way to reach people.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
And another massive one the source points to. Catalogs.
Ah, yes. Mail order.
But not just little flyers. He produced these big, elaborate catalogs, set them all over the country, nationwide.
Which must have been revolutionary itself, just the logistics and the reach?
Absolutely. It let him tap into a market way beyond Philadelphia, essentially creating a national customer base.
Okay, so it's that package deal, isn't it? The trust-building stuff like the guarantee, combined with really pioneering the use of mass media, newspapers, magazines, radio. There's huge catalogs. That's what the source suggests cemented his reputation.
Yeah, he wasn't just selling stuff. He was selling, confidence and accessibility on a whole new scale.
But the story the source tells isn't just about business acumen. His other roles seem really important, too.
Definitely. The article paints him as this dedicated philanthropist, heavily involved in civic life, even politics.
Right, and mentions he served as Postmaster General. That's a pretty high-profile government job.
It is, under President Benjamin Harrison. And think about it, being head of the Postal Service ties right back into his business, right? Getting those catalogs delivered efficiently.
Huh. Good point. A synergy there.
And politically, the source notes he was a member of the Republican Party, so active in the political currents of his time.
And he put his money where his mouth was in terms of giving back.
Very much so. According to the source, big supporter of arts and education, major donor to the University of Pennsylvania, for instance, and other institutions too.
And his faith played a role. He was a Quaker, right?
Yes, a devout Quaker, the article says.
Uh-huh.
Very active in the Society of Friends. And that seemed to fuel a lot of his support for religious and social causes.
Like, which ones?
Well, the source highlights major donations to the American Sunday School Union and also the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association.
Ah, the YMCA. Still a huge organization today.
Absolutely. And his involvement wasn't just writing checks, apparently. The article mentions he even served as the YMCA's chairman for several years.
So real hands-on leadership in those areas, too.
Exactly. It suggests a deep investment across the board: business, community, faith, politics. It all seems interconnected in the way the source presents him.
You know, digging into the source a bit more, there are some other facets to Wanamaker that are, well, pretty interesting, maybe even surprising. They add more layers.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, for one, his Civil War service. The article mentions he was actually a Union Army officer, a captain in charge of a department dealing with special inquiries.
Huh. Didn't expect that. Military service alongside building a department store empire.
Right. Quite a combination. And then there's something the source highlights that feels particularly progressive for his time, his stance on women's rights.
Okay, now that is interesting. What does it say?
It says he was known for actually hiring women in executive positions at his stores, which, you know, back then was incredibly rare.
Wow. Yeah, that would have been very forward-thinking.
And it goes further. The article states he actively advocated for women's suffrage, the right to vote. He was even a member of the National American Women's Suffrage Association.
Out of here.
Yep.
That really does stand out for a prominent businessman of that era.
It really does. A commitment that seems woven into both his business and his public life.
Anything else surprising in there?
Yeah, a couple more things. His role in history preservation. The source credits him with being instrumental in creating Independence National Historical Park in Philly.
You mean like where the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall are?
Exactly. He helped raise funds to preserve those landmarks, so connecting commerce with national heritage.
And one last thing.
Turns out he was also a passionate collector. Fine art, antiques. Had a large collection of paintings and sculptures.
So a man of many interests, clearly. The source definitely portrays him as more than just a retailer.
Definitely. Okay, so let's pivot a bit. Let's connect Wanamaker's world, as described in this source, back to you, listening today. What's the relevance now?
We'll take those innovations we talked about, that money-back guarantee, the easy returns. The source makes it clear how utterly revolutionary that was then.
Right.
Think about how that one idea basically set the standard. It's now just a baseline expectation for you as a customer, pretty much everywhere.
It completely changed the power dynamic in retail, really. And what about the advertising?
Well, Wanamaker's early, massive push into newspapers, magazines, catalogs, it basically laid the tracks for the, let's be honest, completely saturated ad environment we live in now.
Yeah, you can definitely draw a line from him to, well, today's ad world.
He showed how to scale the reach of a business in ways nobody had really done before.
His story, as told here, also makes you think about the role of business in society, doesn't it?
For sure. The source shows him weaving together his business success with community work, philanthropy, his personal Quaker values. It kind of prompts the question, how should those things interact? Or do they interact today?
And those specific tools he used, the ads, the catalogs, they weren't just clever marketing, were they? They were ways of tapping into a growing country, using new tech, new infrastructure like the Postal Service, to literally expand the market.
Right. Responding to the changing world around him. So if you're a learner today, maybe an entrepreneur, or just someone interested in how things work, what's the takeaway from his approach in this article?
Well, it seems to be about relentless innovation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In how you treat customers, how you reach them, and maybe also how your work connects to bigger values or community needs. It's about not just accepting the status quo.
Looking around and thinking, how can we do this differently, better?
Exactly.
So Wanamaker himself passed away, what, over a century ago now? But the source is pretty clear his legacy endures.
It is. The article specifically notes his legacy lives on through his family and the department stores he founded. It even mentions them as still being successful enterprises as recently as 2023, according to their information.
Wow. Okay, so a long shadow. But he's definitely remembered, first and foremost, as that pioneer of modern advertising and marketing, the game changer.
Absolutely. But the source also makes sure to remember him as that dedicated philanthropist and the engaged civic leader, too. It's a multifaceted legacy.
And it wraps up by sort of positioning him as an inspiration, doesn't it? For people who want to make a difference, leave a lasting mark.
Yeah, that's the final impression the article leaves.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on John Wanamaker, based on that Entrepreneur Post article, there's this quote included near the end. It's from Abdallah Alayli, and it really, it makes you stop and think.
What's the quote?
It says, "The biggest problem in our societies is that the rules created by free thinkers are followed blindly by no-thinkers."
Okay. That's potent.
It really is. And when you think about Wanamaker's big ideas, that money-back guarantee that nobody else was doing, the sheer scale of his advertising, using catalogs to blanket the country, those were absolutely rules created by a free thinker in his day.
No question. He fundamentally challenged the norms. Buyer beware was the rule. He created a new one based on trust. Limited reach was the rule. He created new ones based on mass media.
Right. He saw things differently and built new ways of operating. So applying that quote, it kind of forces you to look at the standard ways we do business today. How many of the things we just accept as the way things are done are actually just rules set down by innovators from the past, like Wanamaker?
And the second part of the quote, are we sometimes following them blindly without really questioning why they work, or they're still the best way, or if they could be improved, or, maybe even scrapped for something totally new?
Exactly. It's a real challenge. What does Wanamaker's example, framed by that Alayli quote, make you think about innovation versus just following the playbook in your own world, whatever that might be? Something to chew on.